What's up, everybody? Andy Bassett with Ellerbrock-Norris here, getting back at you with our client question segment, where we review different questions we're getting from our clients on a regular basis. One of them recently, and one that we get often, is how much liability insurance did I carry? Specifically, how much umbrella or excess? It's a great question because it's actually kind of a hard question to answer sometimes. And really, when you think about it, it takes a pretty deep dive analysis to really deeply understand what are we trying to protect and how much do we need to protect. So what I mean by that is whether we're talking about businesses or we're talking about our personal situation individually, it's really about what are we actually protecting, specifically what are those assets. So a lot of times if we're talking to individuals, we'll kind of dive down deep and figure out what are the assets that are really there that we're trying to protect in a catastrophic situation. And as those assets grow, we need to start thinking about potentially purchasing higher limits of liability to protect those assets. Because if we get into a scenario that would cause us to be in litigation, one of the first things that's likely going to happen is they're going to be looking for what's available, what's somebody worth, and that's where they're going to start to value a lot of the litigation. So we tell people a lot of times, let's kind of grow that protection as we grow our assets over time. There are some other things too that we dive into there is how do we own these assets? How accessible are they in litigation? Some of those things play a factor. So it's more than just kind of throwing the dart at the dartboard and guessing. There is, some thought that needs to go around it and really understanding deeply, what are we protecting from an asset perspective. And the same really goes from the business owner side of things. As we grow our businesses, we have more stuff, we inherently have more risk, and we've got more exposure to sizable litigation. And again, for a lot of the same reasons, we've got more things for to be gone after at the time of a lawsuit. So the same concept kind of starts to arise there is as we grow our business, as we grow that balance sheet, those assets, we need to start thinking about purchasing higher limits of liability to protect against catastrophic situations. The other thing that's really important on specifically the business, but even the individual side, is where are we exposed from a litigation environment. What I mean there is, where are our operations? Where could we have things happen? Because we know, states like Nebraska particularly are relatively favorable from a litigation perspective, at least the value of lawsuits we see for a multitude of reasons. But there's a lot of other states that aren't necessarily that same way. So if we're in business and we now shift our operations from, say, Nebraska to another state that's not as favorable, maybe we need to start thinking about, do we need higher protection at this point? Because we've just opened ourselves up to the potential for, higher litigation or higher lawsuits or higher dollar amounts. So those are a lot of the things that go into it. It's much more than just saying, oh, that number feels good or that seems about right. It's really diving deep. And then one other piece we'll add, and we're seeing a lot more of this specifically on the business side, is we're starting to see contractual requirements that are almost forcing us to have to think about carrying higher limits of liability. We're a contractor, we're getting into a contractual situation in a building project, and we're seeing the higher tier contractors start to request higher limits of liability. That may drive this conversation as well. So there's a lot of things to think about. Again, it's a deeper dive than it is just kind of guessing or feeling, kind of the gut feel. And what we used to think 3, 4, 5 years ago was adequate liability limits, it's changed a lot today. So, get with your advisor here at Ellerbrock-Norris or anybody else you may work with and start asking those questions and hopefully come to a solution that fits you.